Okay. Hi, wherever you are in the country, for those in the afternoon, good afternoon. For those of you in the morning, good morning. This is the National Reach Coalition coming on with our first, what we're calling our first annual digital storytelling screening. We are thrilled to be
So it looks like we're having a few technical difficulties. We're so happy to share these stories with all of you. My name is Martha Monroy. I'm the Vice President of the board. We are the National Reach Coalition, and just to give you a little background, we provide technical assistance to communities across the country, and focus on racial and ethnic health equity, providing and advocacy for communities working towards health equity. And so we'd like to introduce you. It's our first digital storytelling screening. We've collected some digital stories about people's experiences during the pandemic. Denise, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Denise Wise David, and I will serve as the first annual digital story screening co-facilitator. On the National Reach Coalition board, I serve as the treasurer, and today as one of the storytellers. In my other life, I work as a program manager for Jewish Family Services Connecting Hearts program. I'm connecting families with children in foster care looking for love and forever homes. My next project with the storytelling will focus on children in care and aging out of the system. So at this time, I want to thank you for joining with the National Reach Coalition and partners as we present the digital stories that capture the powerful narratives of a few community members from across the country, sharing their intimate and personal experience with COVID-19. These personal narratives describe how various events pertaining to COVID-19 impacted and influenced their lives. Now I'm going to give way to Daniel to allow him to give us some background on the digital storytelling.
Hi, everybody. Really nice to see some of you, and hopefully there's many more of you out in live Facebook land. I work for an organization called Story Center. We used to be called the Center for Digital Storytelling. We've been around for many, many years, since the early 90s. When video editing first became available on a personal computer, we at that time were actually a small theater focused on raising up the voices of those not typically heard from. And then transitioned over to helping people do that in screen media as a way to, again, let people have agency over their own stories, as opposed to them being more often than not taken away from them or not heard at all, at least not on screens. So for those years since then, we've been doing these workshops like the one that we just did with Reach, which is really lovely to be able to hold space for people so that they can find a story first and really create a story, soup to nuts, in group and also on their own. So we've been, since COVID hit, we also have had to change, like Reach has, our focus and our ability to offer these kinds of trainings. It used to be in-person trainings, now online. So it was really nice to work with the Reach group, and that's kind of what our focus is. I think they've put links in the chat if you'd like to learn more.
Okay, well, thank you, Daniel.
Sure.
I have heard and seen some of these stories. May I suggest you get your tissues? Don't be afraid to feel some of the emotions you will listen to and the voices as the stories is being told. Our first presenter is Mr. Patrick McNeil. Give us a little background on your storytelling.
First and foremost, thank you guys so much for having me. It is an honor and privilege to be here. And want to definitely thank Daniel and the folks from the Story Center for helping pull this out of us and to help make sense of it. So my story is simply about my plight with COVID. I actually contracted COVID around Thanksgiving, and I was in the hospital for roughly around 10 days. But during that time, there was people who stated that I had died. So I'll let you hear the rest and see what you think.
Man, they told me you were gone. I slipped deeper into the seat as my mouth went from moist to dry, so that I could not utter a word. My hands let go of the steering wheel as my foot pressed the brake, and I placed my truck in park. It took me back to that room, dark, sterile, and lonely. That space where I longed for another's company. I desired the touch of another's hand. I yearned for someone to say something, anything to me. I craved that someone would bring me something that would satisfy my parched tongue, but to no avail. I laid there and contemplated. Had my thirst been quenched for the last time? Would I become another number, another statistic, another net sum game in this deadly game? Who told you that? Who would make such a statement that the life had gone out of me, that my mortality had put on immortality, and that I was on my way to the elders, to my sisters, to my mother, to my father? Who would put those words on me? Who would take it upon themselves to say that I was no longer on this side of glory? Who were they talking to? It could not have been me, because I was as quiet as a church mouse and as weak as a soaked and wet paper plate, for I had lost the ability and the desire to share. The physician's assistant at the urgent care clinic arrives in the room and shares, "If you do not go to emergency right now, we will need you to sign this waiver of responsibility, this waiver of accountability, this waiver of liability." I could barely take a breath. I grasped to inhale, but the depth was as shallow as an infant's wading pool. I was in trouble, but I did not know how much. No, my time had not expired, but CNN said that over 3,000 like me had given up the ghost. Who was I to think I was any better than them? I wondered, had my time come? I still wonder at times, why am I still here? The hardest part about survivor's remorse is the gazing back. There is no rhyme or reason when it comes to my attention. It just does. While holding back the years, you are fully aware that others cannot. And that is what clutters your psyche. The losing of life of loved ones, close friends, colleagues, and coworkers, and the abruptness of it all continues to plague me at times. Yet, I am still here. Seneca tells us that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So I guess luck is not what happened to me, for I was not prepared for this opportunity to continue life. I still struggle with the fact that I am here and others are not. There must be a purpose to this, right? The oxygen flowing in my nostrils as I sat in the darkness. Who would know that I was physically exhausted, mentally drained, emotionally spent, and spiritually hanging on by a thread? Who would know that I did not have a clue if I would be here much longer? I was reminded of what some of the mothers of the church used to say. Baby, you holding on? Yes, mother, I'm holding on. Then, baby, you just keep on holding on. So I find myself sitting in a parked car, alone, on the phone, pondering why someone would think I was gone. Not yet, my brother. I'm yet still holding on.
Wow, Patrick. Do you have any closing remarks?
You know, the fun in doing this was I had a chance to work with my son on this project, and he had a chance to hear me share for the first time to him what it was like going through that process. And so having just a chance to talk to him about what I was feeling and what I was dealing with, and then trying to squeeze it to just something small enough, just a small sliver of what it was like going through it was enlightening for us, and it deepened our relationship. So my hope is that if there are others who are like me, who wonder why they still here and others are not, that they take and understand that there is a reason for it. You're here for a reason, and I hope that they allow their purpose to drive what they need to do.
Thank you, Patrick. That was wonderful. Our next presenter will be Ms. Brenda Sanchez.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So my video talks a little bit about my experience in working during COVID-19 and also dealing with COVID-19 at a personal level, and how that intersection really made me reflect on my personal ties to COVID and how I could better serve the communities that I worked with. So again, thank you to everyone that helped us create these stories. It was a very emotional time to work with all of you, so thank you. So I will now share my story. Please let me know if you can't hear the audio. At first, it was exciting. It was applying all the knowledge I had learned and only read about in textbooks into the real life, and feeling like I had an important role in this time in history. I imagined telling my future nieces and nephews and kids what I did during these trying times, my role, and the impact that I had in people's lives. As time progressed and things got worse, I was disappointed that efforts were not enough and that death was the reality for many. At this point, COVID-19 was still just part of my job. It was a theme I had to address based on the stories I heard from other people and the information I read. I prided myself on the strict protocols I had at home, as I was living with a person even more terrified of the disease. Everything changed in the blink of an eye. My job became personal. After being admitted to the hospital for something non-COVID related, my mother contracted the one thing she feared the most. I hadn't just failed the communities I serve, but my own mother. As COVID-19 took its course on my mother, I was out living a second life. A life where my new connection to COVID-19 stayed at the door the moment I went into work. In this life, I had to listen to people say how this disease was fake, that it was just like the cold. People didn't want to listen to the prevention strategies and resources I was there to share. To them, COVID did not exist. In my other life, COVID was the thing that was killing my mother. It was the thing that had her hooked to a machine 4 times. It was the thing that was taking her breath away. It was the thing keeping her away from us. I had failed my mother and the communities I serve. If I couldn't keep my own family safe, How could I keep others safe? My mother is a fighter in this war, and she won a battle that not many have been able to and will not be able to. I say she won the battle because she is still in this war. As COVID-19 numbers decreased and my work moved from prevention to vaccination, my mother moved from grasping for her life to learning how to breathe again and slowly regaining the strength she had lost. But the battle did not end there. 8 months later, I am still not able to hug my mother. 8 months later, I still see the person I wasn't able to keep safe through a window. 8 months later, people are still dying. And 8 months later, people still don't believe this war exists.
Oh, that was beautifully presented, Brenda. Do you have some additional comments you'd like to add at this time?
Again, just saying thank you. I think, like many of us, we kind of go into autopilot. And I personally hadn't had a chance to really reflect on everything that had happened. So doing this story and working with you guys gave me the opportunity to really reflect and take everything in. So again, just thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. Now it's time for me to share my story. My story reflects the emotions I experienced at the loss of loved ones during COVID-19 and how my loved ones wanted to speak out, but now they are deceased, so they could not. And they're housed in a strange place. The Hinton's Journey. I remember the day my mother called to tell me that my uncle had passed from COVID. 3 weeks later, we spoke again. My uncle's son had also passed away from COVID. My mother mentioned they were both at Elmhurst Hospital in Queens. I had seen a report about Elmhurst Hospital ordering several refrigerated trucks to house all the bodies they had. I immediately thought about my family members lying in the truck. I experienced many emotions for a couple of days that ranged from sad and crying, angry, questioning God, why this pandemic is happening, and finally, peace of understanding. When I spoke with my mother, I asked if the funeral arrangements been made. My mother would always answer, no, not yet. The bodies have not been released. How long do they plan to keep their bodies? I thought to myself. It seemed like how people were treated who died from AIDS in the early 80s. My uncle and his son's body laid in the refrigerated truck for 3 months. In a truck? In a truck? I would ask myself over and over, how did we get to this point of storing bodies? When I received a phone call from my mother, who informed me of the date and time of the virtual funeral, I was elated. This day had finally come. I recently visited New York, and Elmhurst Hospital still has several refrigerated trucks on site with unclaimed bodies. If those bodies are not claimed at the end of June 2021, they will be buried in Potter's Fields, New York City's burial ground for unclaimed bodies. I remember back in the 80s it was listed as one of the worst hospitals in New York City. During COVID, they have risen to the occasion in serving the people in their community. At first, I was upset about my family members being refrigerated in a truck, but in the end, I realized this had to be done, and it also afforded families time to gather their funds to bury their loved ones. I have gratitude and peace for knowing my loved ones go from being bodies in a truck to my uncle and his son, my family being mourned appropriately in a headstone that reads their name, Joe Louis Hinton, 1 and 2. Thank you. Every time I hear that, I still have some strong emotions about my time in dealing with my uncle and my cousin laying inside that refrigerated truck. But I'm thankful that we were able to bury them, have a virtual funeral. And I want to thank the group because you really encouraged me and pushed me through to get to the end. I went the whole time without even a name of my piece until just the wonderful suggestions that I got from the class. And I thank you, Daniel, too, for being the one who was the teacher in teaching us how to do our storytelling. All right, enough about me. Now I want to move over to Mr. Sahel. Wow. Okay.
Oh, sorry, cut out. Did you say my name?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes. Let me share my screen. A quick introduction. So basically, mine is a little bit different in that my perspective was on how my past experiences have kind of driven me on my path to be a pre-med and a public health advocate, which has led me to the work that I do now with COVID. And I really just hope that I can inspire other youth to kind of do things and not feel like they are restricted just because they're younger or less experienced. So thank you all for.
Reuse the same needle as we used for the last procedure. I thought I misheard the anesthesiologist that I was shadowing in India and continued to observe the baby who was about to receive the procedure. Then I heard him say it again. Yes, clean the needle and reuse it for the baby. I was perplexed. Many thoughts rushed to my mind. Needles would never be reused at a hospital in the United States, as it would be unethical. Should I say something? However, I'm not in the US. Maybe rules are different here. This sparked my curiosity. So, instead of objecting, I asked him, did I hear that correctly? Are you reusing the same needle? And to my shock, he said, yes, we are, as the baby's family cannot afford the use of a new needle. And then he continued with his work, making me realize this was common practice. I took a step back, astonished. I did not know how to respond. I was filled with mixed emotions.
Thank you. So Hal, you want to give us any more in depth on that? And we thank you because I think you were the youngest person.
I realized that go through this. I continue.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why, but it kind of restarted. So I'll bring it back to where it left off.
Okay.
Thought.
Sorry, just give me 1 second. I don't know why it's doing this.
So Hal, I could go ahead and let Miss Linda go and come back to you. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Well, Miss Linda, you can go ahead and present your storytelling time. Unmute.
All right, well, let me go ahead and pull mine up. See if I can get to it here. Just one moment, please. And just one moment. Give me 1 moment to pull it up. Okay, just a minute. Share screen. Okay, thank you very much. I just, the video, my name is Linda Dingle, and the video that I did highlights 3 things that I hope that you'll see in the video. First of all, it was a decision that compelled me into an area of work that I have loved and enjoyed for more than 20 years, and that is motivational speaking and also being a certified diabetes and education specialist. It also highlights the relationship between diabetes and COVID-19, the disparities in hospitalizations, and thirdly, the health literacy gap between professionals and patients and how that impacts patients' outcomes. So here we go. President. My heart beat faster. Thoughts of failure raced through my mind. Was I adequate for the job? As president of the leadership board, I found myself in Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, absorbing and learning more about the organization and the disease it represented. Could I make a difference in the lives of people touched by this disease? I had seen many of their struggles to understand why they had gotten this disease. Is it a generational curse on our people? I had heard their cry. How do we embrace this new lifestyle to help manage this disease? I felt their heartache. There were calls from patients in hospitals stating, I'm sick and I need help, but I don't understand a word these doctors and nurses are saying. It's 2020 now. Almost 20 years has gone by, and we are in a worldwide pandemic. I sit at my desk from sunup to sundown to let people know they've tested positive for coronavirus. Some of them also have diabetes. 20 years later, the same questions remain. Why did I get this disease? Why did I get diabetes? Is this disease a generational curse? What can I eat to keep my blood sugars down? Thank you so much for explaining, because I didn't understand a word the doctors and nurses told me at the clinic. I didn't understand a word. I didn't understand.
Thank you, Linda. Do you have any additional comments you'd like to make at this time?
Just it was my first visit to their office. I'm so sorry. I walked out as a volunteer. This morning, I'm trying to stop it. It's playing again. I'm so sorry about that. Well, the only additional things I'd like to say is that it's been a pleasure working with you all at the Story Center. You have had such patience with those of us that, you know, are just a little bit challenged by technology. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank Daniel. I want to thank you for all that you've done to help us produce the video. And I'm honored to be a part of this today. I think that's it. That's it. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing our next presenter.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Sahel. Ian, you ready?
Yes, I am. Let me share my screen.
Reuse this. Print here.
I'm so sorry. I was working a few minutes ago. Daniel, is there any way you're able to share it for me? Because it's lagging on my side.
Technology.
Is it possible to have Sohail
start
from the very beginning?
Yeah, and I can share it. I think I just need to make sure that your screen sharing is off, and then I should be able to do it. Give me a second.
I just want to say, so far as they're getting things together, the stories have been so compelling and so rewarding to hear them.
I think it would be good to start this from the beginning.
Beginning, yes. And so, Hal, you can go ahead and tell us about your story again.
Oh, yes, thank you. So yeah, my story is kind of inspired by not necessarily how COVID impacted me, but how it impacted me directly in the work that I do with the people in my community and even internationally regarding COVID. And it kind of not only making this video inspired me to do more work, but I'm hoping I can inspire more youth to be able to do more and make a bigger impact and not feel constrained just because of how young you may be or inexperienced. There's always something you can do. So thank you.
Great.
Let me just choose it again. I want to make sure that we start from the beginning. There we go. Oh, for some reason, I'm having trouble finding it. Give me 1 second. Okay. Apologies.
Reuse the same needle as we used for the last procedure. I thought I misheard the anesthesiologist that I was shadowing in India and continued to observe the baby who was about to receive the procedure. Then I heard him say it again. Yes, clean the needle and reuse it for the baby. I was perplexed. Many thoughts rushed to my mind. Needles would never be reused at a hospital in the United States, as it would be unethical. Should I say something? However, I'm not in the US. Maybe rules are different here. This sparked my curiosity. So, instead of objecting, I asked him, did I hear that correctly? Are you reusing the same needle? And to my shock, he said, yes, we are, as the baby's family cannot afford the use of a new needle. And then he continued with his work, making me realize this was common practice. I took a step back, astonished. I did not know how to respond. I was filled with mixed emotions. I could feel my blood boil and my mind becoming more and more chaotic with thought. This is outrageous and unethical. The baby should be able to get hygienic medical care. How can a doctor go through this? I continued to boil until a new perspective hit me that cooled my mind. I realized that I should at least be happy that the baby was getting access to health care. In another situation, the baby's procedure would have been too expensive for the family to afford, creating a barrier or wall that would have led to the procedure never happening. So I ended up not saying anything, and the baby's procedure was successful, and the parents were ecstatic. But that spark lit a fire within me, an ongoing flame that burns, motivates me to become a medical professional and a public health advocate that can help children and families have greater access to healthcare without compromising the quality of it, so that our child's care is not dependent on their family's income, something that the child cannot control. Currently, I'm working with an organization in India to help children and families who are suffering during the pandemic by setting up a free mobile clinic to be able to give them the care that they need, while also raising funds to provide PPE and rations to those vulnerable populations who are not able to provide for themselves. I want to continue to make these efforts, not just in the US and India, but around the world, while on my path of becoming a doctor. One day, I myself will be on the front lines and will continue to make that difference as the flame within me continues to burn.
Also, hell, thank us. So powerful. You had such powerful message. You have some comments you like to make?
I just really appreciate you all listening to my digital story. And what was really exciting was the fact that making this story, it made me realize how far I've come since day one, where I did see that anesthesiologists reuse the same needle. And now I'm working with so many different communities and so many different organizations to really complete my goal. So just thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you. That was so powerful. And now our next presenter is Ms. Martha.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. This was a great experience. My story is pretty much about just what's happened the past year and the impact on my family and my community. So I'll go ahead and let that get started.
It was the very beginning of the shutdown, on a Saturday or might have been a Sunday afternoon, days stringing together. I love spending time in nature on the weekends, an escape, breathing fresh air and surrounded by natural beauty, re-energizing and recharging. Spring in the desert, one of my favorite times of year, wildflowers in bloom, happy and relaxed, taking a break from the horrors of COVID. The year has been wrapped in COVID. I try to stay strong, but it's hard, helping my students deal with multiple heartbreaks. A house burns down, students and their families infected, stress and depression, a brother killed by a drunk driver, communities devastated, their pain reaches through the screen. A good show despite a late winter rain. It was warm, the sun felt great on our faces, and not yet scorching. That was coming soon. Hiking down the hills with frequent breaks to try to capture the flowers which are short-lived. My phone vibrated. We had just gotten cell service back and thought it must be a friend responding to the pictures I texted. Hi Martha, I just heard the news about R. Mi más grande pésame. What happened? I'm out hiking. He passed away in his sleep unexpectedly, the recognition and celebration of his life put on hold. Feeling confused, blindsided, and numb, as if I'd been sucker punched. A month later, a brother-in-law. Although expected, no opportunity to mourn or celebrate his life with the family, just mass on Zoom and messages back and forth via WhatsApp with the family in Wate. One big time loop. Surreal and yet very real at the same time. The Mount Lemmon fire lasts 40 days. Scorching heat and now smoke takes away an escape from the COVID. Caught in limbo. August. Lost to COVID, a recently retired promotora who had improved the lives of many. Zoom recognition once again. May 2021, I'm in class. Mom, looks like something serious happened. Dad's on the phone. Turn off Zoom video and run to the living room. Another brother-in-law lost. More WhatsApp and Zoom masses. The light at the end of the tunnel for many in Tucson, turning back to celebrating life and honoring the lives of those lost. Not in Guatemala. The lack of vaccines still requires strict limits on public gatherings. Suddenly, I feel Becky's arms around me, finally able to come home thanks to the vaccine. The hug, warm, loving, and safe. The tears come. The weekends outdoors continue, resumed after the fire was contained. This wasn't a great wildflower season this year due to little rain in the winter. Only this year a bit different. The saguaros have crowns of blooms and are covered in blossoms. A student sends a text. Martha, it seems as though you've been hit nonstop all year. I'm still trying to hold on, and maybe I've been unconsciously telegraphing my SOS. A means of surviving a severe drought. Distance, barriers to family, and the loop starting to fray. Then Dad.
Wow, thank you, Martha. That was also so powerful. And the pictures were beautiful. You have some comments?
Yeah, I really want to thank Daniel and Guzzy for just doing such a wonderful job and all their patience with us and also the group. It was great going on this journey together. I mean, I've always sort of integrated digital storytelling in my work with communities, but this is the first time I actually had a chance to go through the training myself. I've always helped with it, and it's just that the group feels like family now. The NRC board always does, but of course everybody else in the group as well. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting experience going on the other side going through it. So I just want to thank everybody that went through it with me and with us.
Yeah, great. So I want to say this for those who are watching this webinar. Most of us, we did not know each other, but by the end of the class, from those stories, it was just like we have known each other forever. The camaraderie from being able to be yourself and let yourself go in the class, to be able to really experience the storytelling. And we, when I say we, the NRC, we have been thinking about doing the storytelling, not doing it. But when the opportunity came and we could, the significant value that we have learned from this experience is untold. And so I would hope that this is not you guys' last stories, but only the beginning of many, many more stories you could tell about your communities that can be told in storytelling. I see Ms. Charmaine. Would you like to have a comment before we go into the Q&A?
Sure. Denise, thank you for taking over and being host rather than co-host. Zoom has taught us much about the benefit of technology as well as the downfall of technology. Listening to the stories and viewing the stories, the words that come to mind are compelling, gripping, haunting. As Denise just said, the National Reach Coalition has had on our minds to do digital storytelling. And if truth be told, Martha has been leading the cause of us doing digital storytelling. I made the joke a few weeks ago that whenever Martha has said it, I'm looking at Martha, but really my eyes are rolling over in my head because I'm so tired of Martha talking about digital storytelling. Well, Martha actually proved me so wrong because they are so powerful. Over this last year or so, what the National Reach Coalition has been trying to do is to gather people together. We've been doing a series of webinars with target populations around COVID-19 vaccination concerns and how the community is engaged and providing input. The digital storytelling on these individual basis, I think is a powerful partner to what we have been doing with those webinars. I couldn't be more proud of this work that was being done. I was able to sit in, I think, on 3 of it was a 7-part series, and I was able to sit in on 3 of those. And just having Daniel and Ngozi from the Story Center, watching them lead us into how you tell your story, how you first envision the story you want to tell, and then you start writing the story and getting that feedback, I think was so powerful and something that those of us who were part of it will never forget. We're trying to, we've been asked to if we could do a train the trainer with the Story Center, and that's something we're definitely committed to doing. We just need to find the funds to support that effort. But I think at this point, Denise, we wanted to have folks sort of talk about their experiences a little bit more. To have Daniel, we are so sorry that Ngozi is not able to join us today because she and Daniel were real partners in getting these stories out of us and providing us with some gentle guidance about storytelling. Daniel, I said to somebody, I was talking about this yesterday in anticipation of today's thing, and I said, Daniel always incorporates a poem into it. And the person said, well, is it poems that he writes? And I said, no, I don't think so. I think some of them are by other poets, although Daniel may be a poet in his own right. But yeah, those were powerful. So I don't know, Daniel, if you have a poem for us today, but it would be great. Daniel, you talked a little bit at the beginning about how you helped us with this process. And I wondered if you would speak a little bit more to that. And also I want to let folks who are viewing this know that if you have questions, please put them, I think we have a Q&A, or if you have access to our chat, please put them in there so we can ask, we can have the panelists and Daniel, or have our storytellers and Daniel respond to those questions.
Yeah, I'm here. So thanks for all of your notes, and sorry that my colleague Ngozi, who has helped facilitate this workshop as well, wasn't able to be here, but happy to answer questions. I wish I had written all those poems. I wrote none of them, but I really do like to share other people's work in our workshops, both their digital stories and then other things that help to ground the group. One thing to also mention about this is that we always do this work in group for the reasons that you've just heard from some of the people, how people maybe didn't know each other or didn't know each other on this level. It really, when it's a safe space and when there's a good culture in the organization, which there is here, it really opens up a space for people to learn a lot more about each other. And I think that's in part why we do this work, is that once you hear a story about someone and what they've been through or what they're going through, it makes it much harder to treat them poorly. So, and that's, I think, what we hope happens when you hear people's stories, not just for the person that you're hearing it from, but you start to consider that everyone has stories like these that they're carrying around inside of them. And it just helps to humanize people. At least that's what we hope.
Daniel, one of the instructions you gave us after we worked on the stories, you told us that we should think about the stories and think about, importantly, if we want to share those stories. You first come in with the idea of writing the story, you're going to share the story, but then you said to us, you should exercise the option of thinking about your story and whether you want to share that story. And we had one of our storytellers who wrote a powerful story, but decided that she didn't want to share it publicly. Why do you make sure that the storytellers understand they have the right to still think about the story and the sharing of the story?
Well, I think when we set out to do this work from the very beginning, we felt that ownership was a serious, serious thing to take into consideration. And in part, that's why we were doing the work, is so often people's stories were taken away from them, sometimes in really great ways. I mean, it's great work for a documentarian to come into a community and tell a community stories at times. And then there's also space now for people to tell their own stories, or for communities to tell them as well, and they get to decide what the thrust of that story is going to be. And so when we do this work, we're very intent on the storyteller owning their story all the way through. They decide what it's going to be about, they decide what they're going to say, what they're going to write, and they may get feedback from the group and from facilitators that might change that, and often it does. But ultimately the choice is theirs, and as is the sharing of the story, that they have ownership over how they feel about that and where it's shown and how it's shown. That's hugely important to our organization, that we don't own people's stories, nor even does the organization that's hiring us own people's stories. The individual always maintains ownership. And I think that lets people get to the deepest and sometimes most vulnerable stories that they can, knowing that they don't have to show it, that they may just be sharing it with their group. So that's because our number one focus is on the storyteller and their health. and then finding a story that helps them. So even sharing a story with yourself can be hugely impactful. And that is our number one goal. Anything that comes after that in terms of sharing it even within your own group and then out into the public like this is secondary or tertiary to that kind of individual growth and safety.
That has such powerful implications beyond just the digital storytelling, has much larger implications for communities that have not had the opportunity to tell their stories and own their stories. Too many times people come in and want to take those stories out from the community and not give the community, not let it be known that these are the community's stories. These are the stories and they have full ownership over those stories. I think the implications are significant, especially as the key operating principle for the National Reach Coalition is that communities are the leading voices and the leading experts in addressing the racial and ethnic health disparities that prevail in those communities. So this fits nicely in with the principles that you just spoke about in terms of people owning their digital stories. We don't yet have any questions, but I wanted to ask Martha, why had she been such a staunch champion and advocate for digital storytelling in the face of people like some people I know personally who were not initial, did not initial sort of appreciate it?
Well, for all the reasons you just said, right, is that, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, in my classrooms, I use it because I have the great honor of being able to train the next generation of health professionals, and I take that very seriously. And also to really raise the voice of the community because of the work that we do. This is about investing in the community and raising the community's voices and really showing those policymakers and people in power that the wisdom lies in the community. People understand their own situations and people know how to resolve the situations. What we need is to get resources out there. And we need people to listen to the community and listen to the voices of the community. And I find that in my health equity class, I mean, you can throw lots of numbers at people and people can't relate to numbers, right? So even in the face of 600,000 people who have died from COVID and really so highly disproportionately impacting communities of color, people still can't wrap their heads around it. And being able to put a face and a voice and humanize, to realize that we're talking about fellow human beings, which we often, and many people often forget about that, really gets it. And the fact that there are 3 minutes and so much is packed into those 3 minutes, to have people stop and listen, right, is really impactful. And all the opportunities, this is the first time I had a chance to work with Daniel and Ngozi, but I've also worked with Creative Narrations, who also were connected to Story Center at one point. And the relevant change that people have been able to make with digital stories. And so and it fits so much into our philosophy at NRC that, I wasn't going to give up and me, I get my head or hands around something and it works. And so I just think that they're so powerful and so important to the work that we do. So like, that's not sort of a long story, but that's pretty much why.
Thank you, Martha. You really put your finger on it. I think as we listen to the diversity of the voices and the experiences of what COVID-19 sort of meant to individuals, we've been hearing sort of the collective reporting, but having the voices talking about it, and even having Sohail bring in sort of a global piece, but also talk about the experience he had in India and sort of the disconnect between how he saw healthcare or medicine being practiced in India, but in terms of versus his experience here, but also how it challenged him and how he's doing work now around bringing COVID-19 vaccine and healthcare to India. I thought was a pretty important one for us to hear. Michael has a question for Patrick. Michael, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sure. This is Mike from Bronx Health Reach. I just wanted to say to everyone, it was really, really great. I mean, you really captured definitely an essence through your video. So thank you very much. Patrick, my question is, it was the other night, my wife was watching the show. I was just looked up, and it was a scene where they're in a plane and they hit really, really rough turbulence, and everybody's grabbing each other thinking, this is it. And then, of course, it was just really rough turbulence, and they land, and everybody was like, this is it. I'm going to have that divorce. I'm going to quit that job. I mean, life is too short. Your story, I mean, I don't know if you've had a similar life ending or whatever. Have you quit your job, sold the house, traveled the world? Has it been that type of thing, or has it given you, different perspective on this?
Well, first and foremost, that's a great question to ask someone. No, the reason that I wouldn't quit my job is because I actually work for a community. And for the first time in my life, my bosses are the people who lived on the block that I grew up on. So they get to tell me what to do, and it's fun. So I wouldn't quit my job because I think I got one of the best jobs in the world. That's number one. Number two, what remorse does for you is it helps to bring things into focus of really what's important to you, right? And I've always felt that, I have to work for a living, but by that same token, I've been fortunate enough to pick and choose the moments that I got to have. So I choose to work for a community, but in doing so, that means I won't make as much money. I choose to work for a community, which means that I may not have some of the things that other people have, other things that people can do, but I don't think people get the fullness and the richness of the work that I do. And so I'm just reminded, the issue with me was literally, I had a colleague who does similar work that I do in the field. I was in one hospital, she went to a different one. We both had double pneumonia and COVID. She passes away, I live. The question that I'm wrestling with is the why. It's the why in it. And so you begin to say, okay, I'm here. They're not. They're going to their glorious home. I get to go home and quarantine for a few more days. It just makes you think the preciousness of every moment because you don't know what you'll have. So while I didn't have that type of change, I am mindful of knowing that every moment that you have, that you can inhale and exhale is precious and should be treated as such. And so if you got stuff, if you owe your brother or your sister an apology, go give it to them. If they owe you one, forgive them before they give it to you. Whatever it is, none of this stuff is worth anything other than the fact that you're yet still here and you can yet still make a difference. So I would say that, no, I didn't change my lifestyle, but I'm cognizant every morning to wake up. I love using my elders in my story. So I'm going to use this old story that they used to say in the church that I didn't have a clue what it meant. They say, he woke you up this morning, clothed you in your right mind, gave you a measure of health and strength, and he allowed you to put your pants on by yourself. Boy, if that ain't enough to praise God, I don't know what is. So that's what I try to do every day.
So Daniel, you didn't have a poem, but I think Patrick just gave us a poem right there with that ending. So 2 thumbs up for Patrick. I want to sort of piggyback on Michael's question and pose this to each of our storytellers. As I said, and you all know, Daniel told us at the end that we should sit on our stories and decide if we wanted to share our stories after we thought about the stories that we had created. And so my question that I'd like each of the storytellers to respond to is, what made you decide to go ahead and tell your stories? One, and two, what's the impact you're anticipating your stories will have, or the impact your story has had on you? So why did you go ahead and decide to share the story, and what impact has this story had on you? Denise, you want to start off?
I'm as a person, I'm pretty open. And so it wasn't hard for me to make a decision to share the story. It was more about how to present the story, because trying to retain myself and be able to tell that story and not just break down. So I would have chosen to share the story anyway. And the impact it had on me, I grew up in New York, and I've never been to Pottersfield, never even knew much about it. So I did, after finding out that's where the people would end up, I went out and I did some research on it. And it is a place just where it's like a little island that they have where they go to bury people who folk do not, claim their bodies, or the homeless and stuff like that. And then the other impact it made was to really, COVID itself is to really realize how precious family is. Because I come from a family where most of my relatives is much older, because my grandfather was like 40 years older than my grandmother when he married her. So death for me came easy because I was used to older people. My grandfather died at 98. Most of my relatives die old. So this was a struggle for us because my uncle was not old, what I would consider old. And so for him to die and for my cousin to die. So, no day is promised to you and no family member is promised to you. So you need to cherish all that you have now.
Thank you, Denise. Brenda, how about you?
So for me, as Denise mentioned also, I'm pretty open and I do feel comfortable sharing stuff. But I felt that this story, it did take me a while to really completely take it in and see if it would be something that I felt comfortable sharing, since it was a vulnerable time. But I realized that many of us working in the field were also going through similar things. So I felt that it was important to share it, to be vulnerable, so that others could maybe also have that moment to reflect on their own experiences and maybe be vulnerable with me while they watch the video. So yeah, I felt that it was important to share it. And one way that this story really helped me was it really did help me reflect on everything that I experienced and that I'm experiencing through working with COVID, while also having my mom having had COVID. So it was really like a personal growth moment. And it really did help me in more ways than I expected it would. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Sohail.
Yes, so for me, digital stories, also a little bit background is I was in Martha's class and digital stories were always super impactful, and I always appreciated when she did show the digital stories. And so when I signed up for this workshop, they told me I need to tell my story. And I was listening to the stories of the people around me, and they're a little bit older, so they have grand stories. They have stories that like, I was like, I don't know when I'll be able to complete this, because I'm working with magnificent people doing great things. So then I was thinking to myself, what am I going to say? Because I don't feel accomplished at all now. But slowly then it allowed me to reflect and really think to myself, okay, maybe I don't have a story now that kind of was huge, but what kind of started this motivation to create a story in the future? And so that's why I kind of took the story of how this all started and what really motivated me to do everything I did. And throughout, it impacted me in its own way, because initially that first half was all I was going to keep. But then with some reflection, I realized that that first half was about how I wanted to do work back in India. And then I realized I'm already doing work back in India during the pandemic with COVID. And that realization really inspired me to, like, it helped me realize that I was able to complete that cycle, and I am able to, really start that track to completing or starting a story that I am proud of.
Thank you, Sohail. Linda?
Thank you. Why did I decide to tell my story? Well, actually, I'm like Martha. I agree with Martha that storytelling can have a powerful impact on people and the audiences that you're trying to engage. And like Denise and Patrick say, we don't know what tomorrow holds, but we're glad when we wake up in the morning. So I decided to tell my story, hopefully to inspire other people, students, college students, high school students, that sometimes when you're asked to do something, you may not know then, but go ahead and say yes. Take a chance on doing that thing so that you can be just like everyone else. There's some on-the-job training when you don't know everything, and none of us do. There's computers, there's books, there's libraries, encyclopedias, classes, training. So that is why I decided to tell my story. Another reason is that I really consider myself more than a nurse, that I'm a motivational speaker and trainer. And through the years, God has given me the opportunity to stand in front of hundreds of people and to tell a story. And by telling a story, sometimes I find it even more engaging than sharing lectures and PowerPoints and things like that. So that was another reason. In my work as a diabetes educator and as a nurse, as a COVID investigator, many of my coworkers have said, Linda, why don't you take this on the road and teach other people about health literacy and this big divide between doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and the general public in terms of health literacy. Help people understand how to teach people with low health literacy. So hopefully this will be part of a fulfillment of that. From many of people through the years have asked me, take your show on the road. So that is why I shared my story and the impact that it has had on me. It's just been great working with all of you. And I appreciate the time and the patience that you've given. Most of the time, I guess I've been a little spoiled by not having to worry about doing the video because someone else did all the technology and they just expected me to show up and teach. So, and I want to thank Martha. Also, we go back many years and we've done some things together. What, 20 years ago, Martha? I don't know how long it's been. And so I want to thank her. And it was good to see her and Sohail on here. I go, oh, there's some people that I know here, but I didn't know they were going to be a part of this at all until we came online. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Martha. Why did you decide to, after thinking about it, share your story?
It was,
and the impact?
Thanks, Sherman. I've helped with these trainings, and I see how vulnerable it is and how difficult it is. And, it was difficult to share it at first because it was extremely, it's extremely personal, and it's been kind of a rough period of time. But it was, I think it was important, especially for me to share it, especially when, I'm always sort of, respectfully asking community members to share their stories, and it's been such a help. And so, I felt like it was important for me to do the same if I was asking other people to do the same. And I just think also, with going through the story, I didn't realize how much I was holding in all this time and how hard it was to get it out. And through, of course, everybody in the group, and especially Daniel, helping me pull it back to the more personal, which, because I always talk, I love talking about my students and the communities, but, being able to kind of connect that back to me. So I really appreciate it. It has been helpful. I thought, although watching it this time, it kind of hit me again, but, it does create a sense of community. And if we're ever gonna, really make headway in health equity, we need to create that sense of community and humanity. And there's never been so important. I've, like I said, Linda, I've had the pleasure of working with Linda and all of you, but and everybody in the NRC, but Linda and I have worked together for a very long time. And, those relationships that we have in the community and how important they are. So, sharing that piece of myself, I think, was important, just to make that connection with my students and to realize, what happens on the other side of the story, right? I've always respected the storytellers, but this has raised it to a whole another level in terms of really understanding understanding the other side, I guess. So I just want to thank everybody again. It was just been a great experience.
Daniel, thank you. Thank you, Martha. Thank you all. Daniel, for those who have never gone through the training of doing digital storytelling, but who would want to get a better sense of what does it mean to tell your story and tell it digitally, what insights do you have to share with them?
I mean, mostly that it can. I think that the idea that people come and tell stories that they already know is not often the case. They think they're. I don't know if this rings true with everybody, but most people that we work with, I would say over 80% of them end up telling a story that they kind of didn't know. They're getting to know it in the process, and that's why it's a workshop. It's not simply about learning some video editing skills and dropping in some pictures and some music. Really, the scripting of the story, what becomes someone's voice in the story, is a process that goes through so many iterations as someone's hearing themselves tell the story, and what does it sound like to them, and does it feel true and unique, and getting the feedback from other people in the group. I mean, as I said in the workshop, I may be a facilitator and have a lot of experience doing this, and we're all story listeners and storytellers all day long. It's what we do. And so we know when we're listening to a story that's engaging, whether you're a facilitator or not. We're all, as human beings, we know what's grabbing us. So doing this in group and letting people, giving really people a space, I can't impress that enough. People don't usually get it, that how much goes on in the finding of the story and how impactful that is for the storyteller themselves as that story becomes more of a reality. And at different points, it really hits people. It seemingly hits people. For some people, it's writing it. The first time they actually put those thoughts down on paper, that it's kind of undeniable and it lives outside of them in a way. For other people, it's recording it the first time. For other people, it's saying it to the group for the first time. And then for other people, showing the story completely outside of themselves in some ways has a huge impact on them. Their own story makes them cry or makes them laugh, which is a really interesting thing, I think. It's kind of a version of you that you've set down in stone, in a way. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand about the process. It really is not just a video editing process. In fact, that's a really small part of the workshop compared to how much time we spend on helping people to find these stories.
Thank you, Daniel. When folks first read out their stories aloud, as we listened to the story they were telling, the story itself was pretty powerful as they discussed the story they want to tell. And then when they recorded themselves reading their story, it was a double whammy. I think universally, we all responded as we listened to each other's storytelling, that you could listen to that person tell their story like all day. It was so powerful, the voices that they brought in the stories that they were telling. So both the content and just reading it, which makes me think of, which reminds me that in so many cultures, in all cultures, storytelling is a part of it. In some cultures, oral storytelling is something that they do. Those who didn't write their stories, most cultures told their stories. And I think of the word for storyteller, griot, that in a lot of cultures, for many indigenous cultures, the griot, the oral storytelling, is how the history gets passed down from generation to generation, from families to families. So the digital just adds another realm to the storytelling that's so much a part of our human experiences. As Martha's remarks a while ago said, that it creates that sense of community and humanity. And I think that sort of captures it powerfully. Patrick, go ahead, Patrick, then I'm going to ask each of our storytellers to just say a final word as we get ready to wrap up. Patrick.
Okay, I'll do a 2-for-1 then. I'll make my comment and then I'll give my wrap up. The thing is, telling the story is easy. It's deciding that you want to tell somebody the story that's hard, because very few people truly want to listen to you. We live in a society that no one listens anymore. No one listens to what is being said. No one is looking for the feelings that are underneath it. No one is dealing with the situations and the circumstances. So no one really wants to hear what someone has to say, which is why people keep their stories to themselves. Think about this. I shared a story on here that I hadn't even shared with my son. And so for me, it was an opportunity. It was a vehicle to share with my son. But the goal has to be somewhere along the line that we have to become not only better storytellers, but better listeners. Taking the time to listen and hearing where someone is the remarkable piece that comes from here, because that's where everything quits becoming transactional and it starts becoming relational. And to me, that's where we have to get to. So as I close, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to just share, but also help you to see that I'm a very private person. I'll talk all day and won't tell you nothing about me. So to get anything out of me, y'all did a yeoman's job, because I can BS with the best of them. But there was something about this moment that told me that I needed to share something that I hadn't told anyone. Not that I hadn't talked to myself, but I hadn't shared it with anyone. So there are opportunities, and you have to listen to your inner Noah, as my mother would say, when you need to share something for the betterment of those around you and for the betterment of us as people as a whole. Bless you all. Have a great day. And thank you, storytellers. As we do, y'all did an awesome job.
Thank you, Patrick. Who wants to go next?
Charmaine, I'll hop on because there's one other thing that I wanted to mention in addition to the humanity and the creation of community. I think one of the things it made me think when you were talking about culture sharing stories, and one of the primary reasons why stories are passed down from generation to generation is it's to create that resilience. It's to provide those roots, you know, where the roots and the wings, right? Where you came from, those travails that your ancestors went through and how they were able to overcome. Daniel might appreciate this. There's kind of a joke about all of our holidays. They tried to kill us, they didn't get to do it. Let's eat, right? And it's sort of this, you know, like if you think about the Passover story, talking about all, you know, it's like when you think of it as an adult, like as a kid, you just pick it up and you're talking about all these horrible plagues and stuff that you're teaching your kids this. But the point of it is, and I think every culture has this, is how to build that strength, how to provide roots to people and how to build that strength to get the wings to overcome stuff. So your discussion, that just made me think about those sort of things.
Thank you, Martha. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. So I really liked the digital storying workshop, and I really recommend if any of you do get a chance to take a workshop or attend or even work on digital stories in whatever manner, really do, because not only, as I said before, in a way, it's its own self-reflective therapy session where you really get to work on your own story, but also share it with others and hopefully inspire others or kind of raise awareness on what's going on and kind of just open the word out and let people know that there are so many stories out there. You may have a unique story, but there are things that you can share and commonalities with. And so I just really recommend people sharing their story.
Thank you, Sohail.
I can go next.
Great, Brenda.
So kind of going off of what Sohail mentioned, doing this workshop really opened up my eyes to what storytelling really is. I know that in Martha's classes, we've always watched other people's stories and they're very impactful, but I never really reflected on what it took for that person to be able to tell their story. So being on the other side was a big eye-opener and it gave me new respect to people that I've watched in the past and that I will hopefully be able to also watch in the future. So yes, this opportunity to just tell your story, we all have stories, is amazing. And it's a way of being even more connected as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. That leaves Denise and Brenda. Okay.
Brenda, I'll go next. Of course, again, I want to thank everybody for, the workshop. And there's an old saying, Patrick probably knows it in African American churches, but other places too. And it's about testimonies, and they're very powerful in faith communities to use testimonies to inspire people and to help bring changes to lives. And it's said that if you tell a story from your head, it reaches the head of people. If you tell a story from your heart, it reaches the heart of people. But if you tell a story from your life, it reaches the life of people. And sometimes that is really where we want to impact. We want to impact people's lives for good, for change, for the betterment of their lives. So it also will reach the visual learner, the auditory learner, and the kinesthetic learner. So, we're reaching all of that when we tell our stories. And sometimes if we don't want to tell our own stories yet, we can also use stories from other people's lives or stories from books that you've read or other mediums. So I just want to say thank you again, and find your calling and reach back to help somebody else.
Thank you, Linda. Denise?
I did want to go last because I could do twofold. I want to say, I've never thought of myself as a storyteller, and all the encouragement I got from the people in the class about my voice and telling my story and how I emphasize different things during the storytelling time, that was much for me, because I've never seen myself as a storyteller, not having an oratorial voice to be able to make and people feel through the story that I told. So that was another talent that others revealed to me that I have, because I never even thought I had such talent. And then I want to say thank you to everyone who participated in this, and who participated in the class, and who participated in this webinar today, because hopefully someone will see this and realize the benefit of being able to do the same thing for their community, being able to do some storytelling, because there's many stories to be told, because there are many people who are living. So there's many stories to be told and should be told. And so I just say thank you, thank you, thank you for doing this today, and for being in the class, being willing to let yourself go and really get the benefits of being in that class. Thank you.
As usual, the mute button escapes me. Thank you, Denise. Daniel, any last things before we say bye? At least au revoir for now, because not goodbye.
Yeah, no, I guess all we can do is hold space for each other, but really it ends up being, it's on all of you to take an invitation and do what you want with it. And you all really took the invitation in the space and used it in ways that clearly were helpful for you, and then in sharing it become helpful for the community. So I look forward to hearing about how these stories are seen and how they're responded to. As we said, stories beget stories. And I think it's also really natural for many of us, even though we tell stories all day long, when we get into something that feels a little more official, like a storytelling workshop, that we feel like, well, I'm not a storyteller, when of course we all are. So sometimes the reminder that in some ways it's not more than what we do every day, but just a different version of it helps people. So thanks for being willing to be beginners again, experts again, but also beginners again, and something new. As adults, even you, Sohail, who you say you're younger and don't have as much experience, it just, some people really engage with being beginners again, and for other people it's really scary to be beginners again, especially as adults. And COVID, and as that intersects with COVID, we've all learned to be beginners in a pandemic like this together, and maybe that opened up some comfort in this, that we were all beginners and struggling through this time in different ways. So thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you to all our storytellers. Having a story and telling a story, it's important to have a medium through which you tell the stories, which brings me to a big thank you to Southwest Telehealth Resource Center, the Arizona Telemedicine Program, the Mel and the Enid Zuckerman College of Public Health, because they have made it possible to have this storytelling. They have been the medium for this storytelling to be broadcast today. So a huge thank you to an amazing partners who have facilitated so much of the communications and the storytelling that the National Reach Coalition has embarked on over the last year or so. A special thank you to the National COVID Resiliency Network out of Morehouse, whose funding has supported this effort. As you heard, many of the leadership, we named Martha, has had it as one of the things that the National Reach Coalition should be doing. And with the NCRN, we were able to do it. So a big thank you to those partners. I think Patrick said we all have stories. It's, do we find the people who want to listen to the stories? And also I would add to that, do we find the people who think the stories are so important that they will partner with you to get those stories out to the people who want to listen? So thank you to all. The National Reach Coalition is really proud about this premiere. You notice we said this is our first annual. We intended to be so. There are many stories to be told in communities that have been, particular communities of color, that have been grappling with so much around health disparity, not just the pandemic, but it was particularly important that as this pandemic sort of shone the spotlight on racial and ethnic health disparities, that we start off by telling the stories that particularly intersected at that juncture. So thank you all. Thank you for those who joined to listen to our storytellers and to be part of this conversation. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a good week. And continue telling your stories, finding those who will listen to it. And even those who think they don't want to listen to your story sometimes, you have to tell those stories anyway and get them to hear your stories. So thank you again. Daniel, big thank you to you. Please convey our gratitude and gratefulness to Ngozi as well, who helped us really get our voices out there. Take care all. Bye. Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome, hon. Take care.
All right.